Evan Blake wasn't the kind of man you forgot easily. Tall, charismatic, with a lopsided smile and eyes that held secrets, Evan seemed to glide through life like a breeze that never settled. In his 20s, he worked as a freelance photographer in Los Angeles, chasing light, chasing beauty, and, though he didn't admit it to himself, chasing validation through the women who adored him. Evan didn't set out to have many girlfriends. Just happened. They seemed drawn to him. Artists, students, bartenders, lawyers, even a married yoga instructor once. He was always kind, never manipulative, but commitment. That was something he kept at arm's length. "I just want to live in the moment," he'd say with a grin. To some, it sounded romantic. To others, it sounded like an escape. His first real relationship was with a girl named Tessa in college. She was a literature major, passionate and fiery. They spent a year wrapped in each other's lives, reading poetry aloud, making love in dorm rooms, skipping class to lie on rooftops and watch planes pass overhead. But when Tessa started talking about moving in together after graduation, Evan panicked. He told her he wasn't ready. She cried, called him selfish, and left. Evan felt guilty, but not enough to change. Then came Lena, then Camilla, then Harper. With each woman, Evan played a version of himself. Charming, attentive, present. But when things turned serious, he quietly slipped away. He wasn't cruel, just absent when it mattered. In his early 30s, Evan was dating 3 women at once. Not dishonestly, just with vague language and unspoken implications. He wasn't lying, but he wasn't being honest either. That all changed when he met Mara. She was unlike anyone he'd known. Sharp, self-aware, and completely immune to his usual tricks. She called him out when he dodged real conversations. She saw through the facade. "I know what you are, Evan," she said once. "You don't break hearts. You wear them like souvenirs." He didn't have a response. With Mara, things were different. He stayed longer. He listened more. They took trips, argued over politics, laughed until 2 a.m. For a year he thought he could change. But change doesn't happen just because you want it to. It happens when you're ready to let go of who you were. And Evan wasn't ready. Mara left him after finding messages from another woman. Someone he claimed was just a friend. She didn't scream or cry. She simply walked out, and Evan didn't stop her. That night, Evan sat in his dark apartment, scrolling through old photos. Smiling faces, dinners, vacations. But each image felt like a ghost. A life he never fully entered, moments he never fully owned. For the first time, he realized the pattern wasn't about freedom or fun. It was about fear. He wasn't chasing women. He was running from vulnerability. The next year was quiet. No dating. No flings. Just Evan alone with himself. He started therapy. Took long walks. Got honest about his childhood. A father who left, a mother who gave everything and asked for nothing, a fear of becoming either. He reached out to women from his past. Not to rekindle anything but to apologize. Some didn't answer. Some sent back brief messages. Few thanked him. One told him to go to hell. But it wasn't about the response. It was about accountability. At 37, Evan met Zoe. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't immediately swept off her feet. She asked questions. She set boundaries. And Evan didn't flinch. They took it slow. Walks in the park, cooking together, late-night conversations about everything and nothing. It was the first time Evan felt like he didn't need to be impressive. He just needed to be honest. One night, lying in bed, Zoe asked, "How many women have you been with?" Evan took a long breath. "Enough to know I never want to go back to that." She nodded. "Then don't." Evan never became a saint. He still messed up sometimes. Still wrestled with ego, fear, and the urge to run. But he stayed. Not because he was trapped, but because he finally understood. Love isn't about being needed by many. It's about being truly known by one. And being okay with them seeing everything. Evan Blake was 42 when he and Zoe bought their first house. A small craftsman-style place in Echo Park with creaky floors and a lemon tree in the yard. Zoe taught design at a community college. Evan had finally turned his photography into something stable. Portraits, wedding shoots, the occasional gallery. Life was quieter than it had ever been. And he liked it. But there were days when silence stretched too long. Days when the old version of him, restless, hungry for attention, rose like smoke from a forgotten fire. He never acted on it. But he noticed it. That scared him more than anything else. It was at a local art gallery opening. Evan was showing a series called Moments Between, that he saw her. Her hair was shorter. She wore glasses now. And she had a small boy holding her hand. "Evan," she said, like a memory surfacing. "Didn't expect to see your name on the wall." They chatted. Light, dull, unspoken layers thick in the air. "This is my son, Theo," she said. "He's 6. Evan did the math. Didn't add up. Mara must have had him after their breakup. But for days after, Evan couldn't shake her face. Not with desire. With guilt. With the ache of unfinished chapters. Zoe noticed. Course she did. "You've been somewhere else lately," she said one night over dinner. "Is everything okay?" Evan hesitated. He wanted to tell her about Mara. About the swirl of feelings. About how it shook him, not because he wanted to be with her, but because she represented who he used to be, and who he might still become if he wasn't careful. "I ran into someone from the past," he said finally. "It stirred stuff up." Zoe nodded. "Someone you loved?" "Yes." She didn't flinch. "Do you still?" "No. But I used to love the freedom I felt when I was with her. That scares me more than loving her." Zoe reached across the table. "Thanks for telling me." 2 months later, Zoe's father had a stroke. She flew to Ohio for 2 weeks. Evan stayed behind for work. The silence returned. Long nights. Tea house. Ghosts of old habits whispering. One night he got a message. From Camille, an old girlfriend from 10 years ago. "Saw your work in the gallery. Beautiful. Want to catch up?" He stared at the screen. The old Evan would have said yes. The new Evan didn't reply. Instead, he deleted the message and booked a flight to Ohio. He showed up unannounced at Zoe's mother's house with coffee and a bag of her favorite snacks. Zoe opened the door, surprised. "I just didn't want to be anywhere you weren't," Evan said. The years that followed weren't perfect. There were arguments, dull seasons, times Evan wondered if monogamy was sustainable or just a noble ideal. But then came mornings when Zoe fell asleep on his shoulder while they watched old movies. Evenings spent replanting the garden. Quiet dinners with no phones. Those were the moments that reminded him. Love isn't a story you finish. It's one you keep rewriting. On Evan's 50th birthday, Zoe surprised him with a photo album. Inside were candid pictures from their years together. Trip, holidays, lazy mornings. At the end was a blank page with a note. "There are still so many moments between. Let's keep filling them in." Evan closed the book, heart full. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like he was missing anything. He felt complete. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon when Evan found the old box in the attic. He and Zoe were cleaning, sorting through years of photographs, journals, mismatched socks. The box was unmarked, just a worn cardboard thing, taped at the edges, smelling faintly of cedar and dust. Inside were photos he hadn't seen in decades. Tessa, sitting barefoot in a field of dandelions. Camilla, laughing with a glass of red wine. Mara, blurry and beautiful, caught mid-spin in a yellow dress. So many women, so many lives. He sat there for a while, knees aching, rain tapping softly on the roof. He didn't feel regret. Not anymore. Each of those women had been part of his becoming. Not just bookmarks in a story, but chapters that shaped him into a man who had once been afraid to stay, but finally chose to. Later that evening, Zoe found him in his studio, holding one of the old black and white prints. He didn't speak right away. Just handed it to her. "Who is she?" she asked gently. "Someone I broke a long time ago." Zoe didn't look threatened. She just nodded and handed it back. "Keep it," she said. "That man isn't you anymore. But he's part of who you are. Frame him if you want to. Just don't live in his house. Evan smiled, tired, warm, free. He placed the photo in a drawer, not out of shame, but with respect. Later that week, he developed a new series titled Becoming. No models. No perfect lighting. Just quiet, imperfect moments from daily life with Zoe. Her watering the plants, brushing her teeth, laughing in the kitchen. He didn't need to chase beauty anymore. He'd come home to it.